When Nolan Wells' friends returned from their 4th of July boat trip without him, they claimed a mechanical failure forced an early departure, and that Nolan chose to remain behind. While records support the vessel's battery failure, they do not explain why he would voluntarily isolate himself. A young woman he met described their interaction as brief, but his family fiercely disputes that he would willingly strand himself without his phone or keys. Today, we bypass speculative theories and examine the official GPS tracking data and witness statements presented by both sides of this investigation. If you want the truth behind the headlines, hit subscribe to U.S. Crime Cases right now. We break down the facts, no rumors allowed. The released dispatch recording does not confirm a battery failure.
We're sinking. Can you all please come?
And is everybody on board in good health otherwise?
Yeah, everybody's on board.
It records a reported bilge pump failure and water entering the boat. That emergency helps explain why the vessel departed early, but it does not explain why Nolan was not aboard. Take a second to really think about Nolan as a person. He was just an 18-year-old kid, a student athlete with his whole life ahead of him, heading out to the water to celebrate a normal holiday weekend. You have to feel for his parents, Christine and Elmore, sitting at home, expecting their son to walk through the front door sunburned and tired, only to get the news that he just wasn't there. It is a nightmare scenario for any family, and speaking simply as a human being, it is heartbreaking. We are talking about a real family missing their boy, not just a headline on the internet. The boat's movements and the emergency call confirm that something went wrong aboard the vessel. But neither record can tell investigators whether Nolan personally chose to stay, whether another boat agreed to transport him, or whether his friends confirmed that arrangement before leaving. In this breakdown, we will look at exactly what the emergency dispatch call proves about why the boat left, what the 4:31 p.m. marine tracking record establishes about the departure, how the young woman's reported account conflicts with the reason given for Nolan remaining behind, and third, the phone location evidence and the hours that passed before Nolan was officially reported missing. Was Nolan safely handed over to another group, or did everyone leave believing somebody else was responsible for him? To understand the timeline properly, we have to start with the boat's movements that morning. According to reported marine tracking data pulled by investigators, the vessel left its dock around 9:56 a.m. It was the 4th of July, so you can picture the scene, right? There were boats everywhere, people hanging out, and tons of groups heading out to the barrier islands for the day. The tracking data shows that they reached Horn Island at approximately 11:14 a.m. So they arrive, they settle in, and everyone starts doing their own thing out on the sand and in the water. Now fast forward to the afternoon. The tracking data confirms the boat departed the island at 4:31 p.m. But here is where things get really complicated. Statements from the group who were with him indicate Nolan was last seen around 3 p.m. I see that time gap, and honestly, wow. That leaves a massive 90-minute window between 3 p.m. and 4:31 p.m. that witness statements must eventually explain to the police. An hour and a half is a long time to lose track of someone on an island, especially when you are part of the exact same group that traveled there together. Think about how much can happen in 90 minutes. Where was he during that window? Who was he talking to? What conversations were actually happening among the group as the afternoon started winding down? During that late afternoon window, an emergency dispatch call was made. Someone aboard the boat reported that the bilge pump was not working and that water was actively entering the boat. If you have ever been on the water, you know that hearing your boat is taking on water immediately shifts the mood from a casual party to a genuine panic. It is a real emergency. When the dispatcher got on the line and asked whether everyone aboard was safe, the caller indicated that the people aboard were safe. But we have to look closely at what that actually means. The caller was answering a direct question about the status of the vessel in that specific, highly stressful moment. They were dealing with a sinking risk. That statement, logically, could have referred only to the passengers who were physically standing on the deck right then and there. It does not prove Nolan was on the boat at the time of the call. It just proves that whoever was standing on the deck wasn't actively drowning. It completely explains the rush to leave the island. If your boat is taking on water, you are not hanging around. You are trying to get back to the mainland safely. But it still doesn't bridge the gap of why they pulled away from the shoreline without an 18-year-old who came with them. This brings us to the young woman Nolan reportedly met on the beach, and she now becomes one of the most important witnesses in the entire timeline. According to the public statements from his friends, Nolan chose to stay behind specifically because he had met a girl and wanted to hang out with her. They claim he made a voluntary choice to ditch his original ride home to stay with this new group. Let's look at the other side of that. According to Nolan's mother, who has spoken publicly about this, the woman described their interaction as brief. Statements released by civil rights attorney Ben Crump also say this young woman indicated Nolan intended to return to his original boat. That appears to conflict completely with the explanation that Nolan remained behind because he wanted to spend more time with her. If you meet someone for just a few minutes on a busy beach, do you tell your friends to leave without you? It is a huge contradiction. But we have to be fair and stick to the facts here. Without her complete, unedited, recorded police interview, this remains a reported contradiction from the family and their lawyer. It is not legal proof that anybody lied. The emergency dispatch answers one question: why did the boat leave early? It absolutely does not answer why Nolan was not on it. Did Nolan personally say he wanted to stay? Who actually heard the words come out of his mouth? Did he clearly point to the boat taking him home? And did that boat's operator physically accept responsibility for him? Did anyone in his original group confirm Nolan was standing with the second group before they pulled up the anchor? And a really tough question: did Nolan even know his original vessel was leaving at 4:31 p.m.? The mechanical emergency may explain the departure. The young woman's reported account raises a totally different question. Did Nolan actually intend to remain behind at all? This leads directly into the dispute over his belongings, which is the part of the story that makes a lot of people uneasy. Nolan's group returned to the mainland with his cell phone and his keys, while he remained out on Horn Island. According to his parents, willingly separating from his group without his phone or the keys to his car is entirely unlike him. We all know how connected people are today. Leaving an island without your phone or the keys to get home once you reach the dock just doesn't make sense to his family. The friend's position, however, is that Nolan chose to stay and expected to return with another group. A friend has publicly stated that Nolan left his phone aboard before going into the water because people commonly place their phones somewhere dry on the dashboard while swimming in the salt water. I see their point on that specific detail. It makes perfect sense to leave your electronics on the boat when you jump into the ocean. That could perfectly explain how the phone initially remained on the dashboard during the afternoon, but it does not fully explain why it traveled all the way back to the mainland without its owner. When handling a missing person timeline with no eyewitness video, investigators are put in a difficult spot. How should they balance a family's deep knowledge of a person's character against the physical items left in the boat during a chaotic, rushed departure? If the boat was taking on water and everyone was panicking to leave, did they just forget to hand him his things? Investigators must verify the claim about the second ride. Which exact vessel was supposed to transport him? Who operated that vessel? Did the operator of that second boat personally agree to take him aboard? You cannot just assume someone has room on their boat. Did anyone exchange phone numbers or establish a meeting point on the mainland so they could return his phone and keys to him later? Did someone actually see Nolan board or remain with that specific group as the broken boat pulled away? A change of plans is not a confirmed handoff unless the person providing the new ride knows and accepts the responsibility. You make sure your friend has a safe ride before you leave. The boat operator's logs confirm a failing bilge pump and an early departure due to water entering the vessel. From a legal standpoint, should a watercraft operator be held strictly liable for any passenger left behind during an emergency evacuation, or does a voluntary choice to stay release them from liability? The court and the police have to figure out where the line is between an accident, a misunderstanding, and negligence. If the second boat never clearly accepted Nolan as a passenger, then the question may not be why one group intentionally abandoned him, but whether a dangerous assumption was made by people rushing to save a sinking boat. And that brings us directly into the digital footprint of this entire case. According to the digital tracking logs, the Life 360 app helped Nolan's family locate his physical phone on the mainland after the group returned. Now, I see a lot of people talking about this app online, so we need to be very clear about what it actually does. Right, Life 360 did not publicly track Nolan's physical movements around Horn Island. It only tells us where the device went. It operates by pinging cell towers and GPS satellites to create a digital breadcrumb trail. It tracks the hardware, not the human being holding it. For parents, an app like that usually provides a sense of security. But when the phone separates from the person, that technology goes from being a safety net to a source of sheer horror. The phone was eventually recovered from a friend's home. Just pause and put yourself in the parent's shoes for a minute. You are checking an app to see if your teenager made it back safely from a holiday trip. You see the little digital dot sitting at a house on the mainland. So maybe you naturally assume he is just hanging out, unpacking, or grabbing dinner with the group. But then time passes, he isn't answering texts, and you find out the phone is sitting there, but your son is nowhere to be found. Wow, that is a terrifying, gut-wrenching feeling. Speaking purely as a human being, the emotional whiplash of that moment is unimaginable. We are talking about a family desperately looking for their boy. Nolan's family has raised serious alarms over the device itself because they found little to no Snapchat activity from a period when they expected him to have been heavily using the application. We all know how teenagers communicate today. If they are out on a boat with friends or at a massive island gathering for the 4th of July, they are usually posting photos, sending videos, and keeping up with their snap maps. If Nolan was active, he likely would have been snapping videos of the water or the beach. So a sudden, unexplained drop in Snapchat activity stands out as a massive red flag to anyone who knows his habits, what police call a negative indicator. Because of this silence, the family and the district attorney's office have officially agreed to coordinate a full, rigorous inspection of the device. At this time, no forensic results have been publicly released. The police and the court have to extract the raw data, review deleted items, and analyze the background app refreshes before anyone can say for sure what happened on that phone. You hand a phone over to investigators, and they are doing deep data dumps, which takes a lot of time. Like, the timeline of the evening is just as heavily scrutinized as the afternoon. Nolan's mother officially reported him missing shortly after midnight. The larger official search developed afterward. This was not an immediate multi-agency search beginning the second the broken boat hit the docks. The hours between the 4:31 p.m. departure from the island and the midnight missing person report are the subject of intense focus. And honestly, this is where the questions really start to pile up. We are talking about roughly 7.5 hours of gray area. Let's break that down. When did his friends actually expect Nolan to arrive on the mainland? If you leave a buddy behind because he supposedly caught another ride with some people he just met, you usually check in, right? You send a text saying, hey, did you make it back? Did anyone try to contact the alleged second group to check on him? When exactly did they learn he was not with them? I look at that massive gap in the evening and wonder about the logistics of returning from a boat trip. Usually, you dock the boat, you unload the heavy coolers, you wash down the deck, and you pack up the cars. During all that physical activity, did nobody realize he was entirely unaccounted for? Someone had to physically pick up his phone from the boat's dashboard, walk it off the vessel, and carry it inside the house. Who was that person, and what did they think they were doing with it? Did they assume he was walking right behind them? Did anyone attempt to return toward Horn Island once the sun started going down? Was an informal search happening among the friend group before authorities were officially contacted? And a really heavy question that the family is rightfully asking: Why was Nolan's family not alerted earlier in the evening? If it is getting dark and the boat that was supposed to bring him back is completely empty, when does someone finally pick up the phone to call his mom and tell her they lost track of him? Furthermore, when did someone first recognize that his phone had returned to the house without him? You usually realize pretty fast if you have an extra phone sitting on a kitchen counter or ringing in the bottom of a beach bag. The phone reached the mainland. Nolan did not. What happened during the hours before his family learned that those two things had become separated? That is the dark space investigators are trying to fill in right now, and it is the gap that causes the family the most pain. If you haven't subscribed to U.S. Crime Cases yet, hit that button now so we can keep bringing you the verified facts on these investigations. As this case gained incredible traction, it produced a massive amount of online speculation. Reports have documented a pool party photograph falsely presented as proof that Nolan safely returned from the island. You have probably seen it floating around your feed. Well, it is unverified or completely debunked. That viral photograph was reportedly taken a week before Nolan disappeared, not after the Horn Island trip. There are disputed videos incorrectly connected to him, heavily edited audio clips, and even AI-generated images tied to the case. Think about how damaging that is. We are dealing with a real family suffering a devastating loss, and they are forced to log online and see fake images of their son being passed around for clicks. This online static and digital disinformation makes finding the truth so much harder for the actual police. People see a fake image on a social media app and instantly treat it like court-admissible evidence. Imagine being a detective working this case. Your phone lines are ringing off the hook, but it is not real tips from eyewitnesses. It is people calling about a TikTok they saw. It completely jams up the system. To cut through all that dangerous noise, the Jackson County Sheriff's Office formally asked beachgoers for original, unedited photographs, videos, and eyewitness accounts strictly from the northwest tip of Horn Island. Investigators specifically requested original files for a very important reason. When a court looks at digital evidence, they do not look at screenshots. They require a strict chain of custody. Original files contain timestamps, exact GPS coordinates, and raw metadata that go completely missing from social media copies. When you upload a video to an app, the platform automatically compresses the file and strips away the hidden background data that police use to prove exactly when and where a recording was made. According to the sheriff, more than 60 witnesses have been interviewed so far, including the 3 friends who initially traveled with Nolan. That means detectives are currently sitting down comparing 60 different human memories against the digital footprints, trying to find the absolute truth. With the FBI stepping in to address interstate threats and local police crowdsourcing authentic beachgoer photos, this case highlights the massive, unpredictable impact of social media. Does intense online scrutiny help keep an active investigation fully transparent? Or does digital static make it harder for authorities to establish the truth? It is a fine line between crowd-solving and causing absolute chaos. Right. So let's talk about the FBI's involvement, because there is a lot of misunderstanding here that we need to clear up. The FBI has assisted with parts of the investigation where federal resources may help. The Bureau also confirmed it is working separately to address interstate threats received by people connected to the case. That is a crucial legal distinction. The FBI has not taken over. Jackson County remains the primary agency leading the death investigation. Federal involvement in evaluating threats against individuals does not establish that a federal crime occurred on the island itself. It just means the local police asked for federal tools to handle online harassment that crosses state lines. When people start making threats over the internet, it becomes a federal wire issue, which brings the FBI into the fold to protect the integrity of the investigation and the safety of the public. Online posts can create massive, complicated theories within minutes, but real life simply doesn't work that fast. Investigators need original files, confirmed identities, and highly reliable timestamps before any image or audio recording can actually establish what happened out there on the water. It is a slow, methodical process of gathering witness statements, matching them against digital logs, and seeing where the lies, the panic, or the misunderstandings actually live. The justice system moves at its own pace, carefully evaluating what the police said, what the evidence shows, and what the court will eventually allow to be presented in front of a jury. Right, so as we wait for all that digital data to be extracted and analyzed, we have to look closely at where the physical investigation stands today. Currently, the official position from local authorities is that they suspect drowning, and the police said they have found no initial evidence indicating foul play on the island. But you and I both know that suspecting something is not the same as a closed, proven case. The final official cause and manner of death have not been publicly determined yet, and the complete, detailed autopsy findings remain pending. When the police said they suspect an accidental drowning, it created an immediate, visceral wave of pushback from the people who actually knew him best. Nolan's parents maintain that he could swim, and they have repeatedly questioned how a strong, elite athlete could have just drowned without being noticed at a crowded daytime gathering. I see exactly where they're coming from. If you raise a kid, you know what they are physically capable of doing. You know if they are comfortable in deep water. But we also have to look at this objectively as investigators do. While his ability to swim is incredibly relevant to his family's concerns, it does not medically rule out drowning in open water. The ocean is totally unpredictable. We are talking about potential rip currents, sudden drop-offs beneath the sand, and the sheer physical exhaustion of treading water. The autopsy, the toxicology findings, the specific water conditions that afternoon, and the exact sequence of events must all be evaluated together by the medical examiner. They do not just look at the lungs, they reconstruct his physical state. Until those independent medical reports come back, we are simply waiting on the science. This case has drawn immense national scrutiny, and it is impossible to talk about this without addressing the social dynamics of that day. Reliable reporting indicates the family and their attorneys described Nolan as one of very few Black people among approximately 200 people at the Horn Island gathering. Just picture the sheer size and chaos of a 4th of July boat party with 200 people. Music is blaring, boats are anchored close together, and people are constantly moving from the sand into the water. How does a standout athlete, someone people clearly notice, just vanish in a crowd that massive without a single person seeing him slip under the water or seeing exactly whose boat he climbed onto? That is the question driving people crazy. The intense focus on this investigation stems from those exact circumstances. It comes from the heavily disputed witness accounts and the deep, painful concerns raised by his family about how the initial missing person report was handled by authorities that night. Wow, it is a lot for a family to carry. You can completely understand why the public is demanding answers. When a family feels like their initial calls for help were not treated with the urgency they deserved, the community naturally steps in to amplify their voice and demand transparency. Because of all these lingering questions in the national spotlight, the family has brought in serious outside help. Civil rights attorney Ben Crump represents Nolan's family now, and he is publicly pushing for a full, transparent review of the witness evidence, the phone information, and the medical findings. The family isn't just taking the initial police statements at face value. They want their own experts looking at the files. We are also seeing high-profile figures step in to support them. Colin Kaepernick is actually helping pay for an independent autopsy, while Tyler Perry has assisted the family with the funeral expenses. Seeing massive public figures step up like this shows you just how far this story has traveled outside of Mississippi. But I want to be very clear here because rumors spread fast. Their involvement reflects the family's demand for absolute transparency and an independent look at the initial local conclusions. It does not legally prove that a crime occurred on that island. It simply proves that the family now has the resources to ensure no stone is left unturned and that the local investigation is being watched by the entire country. So, where does the legal system go from here? District Attorney Angel Myers McIlrath stated that the completed investigation would be presented to a grand jury. Now, if you're not totally familiar with how the courts work, This presentation does not mean charges are definitely coming. It does not mean that anybody has been publicly identified as a criminal suspect. As the court said previously, in similar cases, you cannot just arrest someone because a tragedy happened. You have to prove that their actions crossed the line into illegal behavior. A Mississippi grand jury is basically a panel of everyday citizens. They will sit in a closed room, review the completed files, evaluate the evidence neutrally, and decide whether sufficient grounds actually exist for criminal charges. The burden they carry is heavy. What specific thresholds must the marine GPS data and the witness statements cross for an investigation to move from an accidental drowning inquiry into a serious question of criminal negligence? This grand jury is expected to look at every single piece of the puzzle we just broke down. They will literally sit there and listen to the audio of the dispatch call to hear the tone of panic about the sinking boat. They will map out the marine GPS records to verify the exact 4:31 p.m. departure time. They will read the unsealed sworn statements from every single person who was aboard that original vessel. They will review the young woman's full unedited account. Did she actually tell police that he was planning to go back to his original boat? If she did, that fundamentally changes the narrative. They will demand the absolute identification of the alleged second vessel. The phone and social media analysis will be front and center, along with the original photographs and videos collected by police directly from beachgoers. They will compare the official and independent autopsy findings side by side. And perhaps most importantly, they're going to deeply scrutinize the dark hours between the boat's departure and the midnight missing person report. While the legal system moves at its own incredibly slow speed, the family still has to navigate their grief. Nolan's funeral is scheduled for tomorrow, Monday, July 20th, 2026, at Centerpoint Church in Ocean Springs, Mississippi. Visitation is scheduled from 9 a.m. until 11 a.m., with the funeral service beginning immediately afterward. Reverend Al Sharpton is expected to officiate. Tomorrow is going to be an unbelievably heavy day for that community. They are laying to rest an 18-year-old kid who went to the beach to celebrate a holiday with friends and just never made it home. My heart truly goes out to them as they face tomorrow. So we come back to the title of the video. Why did Nolan Wells' friends return from Horn Island without him? Their public explanation, as stated through their lawyers and the media, is that a genuine boat emergency forced an earlier departure and that Nolan actively chose to remain behind and return with another group. The dispatch call and the marine tracking records absolutely support the existence of a mechanical emergency, and they establish exactly when the vessel left the island. But here is the absolute truth of what those records do not show. They do not establish that Nolan clearly agreed to stay on that beach. They do not prove that another vessel actively accepted responsibility for him. They do not show that his original group confirmed he had a safe ride home before they pulled up the anchor and drove away. His family firmly disputes that he would willingly remain out there without his phone and his keys. And the young woman's reported account appears to conflict directly with the explanation given by his friends. Think about it for yourself. Would you willingly let your friends drive away with your house keys, your car keys, and your only phone, assuming you would just find a ride from strangers? It just doesn't sit right with the people who raised him. Right now, deliberate abandonment has not been legally proven. The central, agonizing, unanswered question is whether there was a confirmed handoff, a real conversation where someone else promised to take him home, or only an incredibly dangerous assumption that somebody else would bring Nolan back to the mainland. Do the available records show that Nolan clearly arranged another ride, or do they reveal a failed handoff in which different people just assumed someone else was responsible for him? The records explain why the boat had to leave, but they still do not fully explain why Nolan was not aboard. Based only on the confirmed timeline and the verified witness accounts, how do you understand that decision? Keep the discussion in the comments factual and respectful, because a real family is reading them. Thank you for staying till the end. To uncover the verified facts with us and support the truth, please subscribe to U.S. Crime Cases today.